cushy favors. Either way, it's not innovation that builds these fortunes, it's public money, your money, quietly funneled upwards, turned into private wealth for the people already holding most of the cards.
Your money and your labor. That basically take all of their wealth and dump it into a 501c4, an advocacy group. No, not a C3, a 501c4, which is an advocacy group, so that it's another version of tax evasion. You can't even do the washing away of your sins, which, what might those sins be? I don't know. Okay, interestingly enough, you recognize that there are some sins involved, even as a joke. But even that aspect of it has turned into a money laundering and tax evasion policy. Like, what are we talking about? So yeah, of course, there's a lot of growing resentment towards the very wealthy citizens that dominate people's lives. Like, it's a healthy resentment to have, as I say all the time. In any case, it's not like he was ever, it's not like he was ever an advocate for this social contract anyway. Also, oh my God, what a fantastic video to look into right as we were talking about this from Hakim. Why do people defend billionaires? Let's take a look.
The US is an oligarchy, and every single year this becomes more evident.
This is another thing that I find really funny is people saying, people don't know, Americans don't know what oligarchy means. Stop using the term oligarch. And it's like, yes, they do. What are you talking about? The only difference is we only use the term oligarchs when talking about Russia, foreign adversaries in general. You're mad that we're using it for the American oligarchs as well. That's it. Yeah, it was Slotkin that was like, don't use the term oligarch, please. Don't use the term oligarch. That's for Russia. That's for China. It's like, no, we have them. We do.
Normally, this fact is subtle, but recently, rather than hiding behind the power of money and lobbying groups, billionaires in the second Trump run show their face openly and seem almost proud of their cozy relationship to state power and their ability to control a so-called democratic government. How did this all start?
We gotta
the
go
first
back.
Billionaires, in the modern sense of the word, started to appear in the early 19th century in the US during the
Yeah, also, by the way, there was a different term for it. Robber barons, okay? There's a different term for it. Now it's oligarchs, but before it was robber barons.
so-called Gilded Age. Due to the massive and massively uneven economic growth at the time, a small group of people managed to amass extreme wealth. They were very different from the richest members of society before them. They made their money mainly through business and industry, and didn't hold formal titles or political positions, but they had immense wealth, and through that, power. These were known as the robber barons. This was a period of a more blatantly unregulated capitalism, where exploitative business practices such as workers being paid almost nothing, dangerous working conditions, and abuse was routine. Their customers received poor quality products and inflated prices, and were faced with price hikes, collusion, fraud, supply limitations, and more in an effort to drive up prices artificially. They held total monopolies across industries, formed trusts, and bribed politicians into helping them keep their positions. They were also, at the time, absolutely hated by the public. As time went on, political agitation and the international situation forced better conditions at home, but exported the relentless profit-seeking and horrible conditions abroad instead. At home, many billionaires made their way in tech or finance industries, rather than heavy industries. Through the new frontier of internet and tech, they've managed to somewhat improve their image in the public eye. Some people are now even willing to openly support their wealth hoarding. Moving into COVID, well, it devastated most people, but not billionaires. While millions fell into poverty, 573 new billionaires emerged, one every 30 hours.
Fantastic.
Meanwhile, nearly
Kevin O'Leary's like, this is great.
8 million people were pushed into extreme poverty at almost the same rate. The clear wealth shift, of course, went unmentioned. Billionaires didn't suddenly become smarter or work harder overnight. Instead, workers slaved away for longer hours, often for lower pay and in worse conditions, while the wealthy manipulated the system to their advantage. Through privatization, monopolies, deregulation, and attacks on workers' rights, they funneled an obscene amount of wealth into their own pockets, often with the backing of governments prioritizing corporate profits over people's well-being. In just 24 months, billionaire wealth grew more than it had in the previous 23 years combined. Before the pandemic, the world's billionaire-controlled wealth was equivalent to 4.4% of global GDP. Now that figure stands at 13.9%. That's a threefold increase. Today, 2,668 billionaires control over $12.7 trillion, which is 3.8 trillion more than in 2020. The 10 richest men alone own more wealth than 40% of humanity combined, about 3.1 billion people.
Nothing wrong here. This seems like a good system. Yeah, look who it is, by the way. This seems like a perfect system. I don't understand. Like, what? No, these people are... My lordship has been destined by God to never have to toil to land again. Which one is your dad, Hasan? They're all my dad. They're all your dad too. That's the funniest fucking... every now and then I see like I see a fucking reply to one of my tweets, and I always laugh when I see his dad is a multi-billionaire. Yeah.
This is the result of a system designed to ensure the rich get richer regardless of what happens to everyone else. Even during economic downturns, billionaires profit. When COVID sent markets into chaos, investors funneled money into corporations.
I dated a girl who believed your father was a billionaire. Wow. That's weird. Like, you're openly admitting to dating someone with an intellectual disability. Cool, I guess. That's cool that it didn't get in your way. You know, it wasn't a hurdle in your relationship.
Deemed too big to fail, further enriching the wealthiest. Government bailouts and relief programs disproportionately benefited them by design, proving once again that under capitalism, crises aren't setbacks for the rich, they're opportunities. Back to the video in just a minute. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Proton Mail. Freedom isn't possible without privacy.
Blaming the
Throughout
chat
the
for being
United States, your
open-minded?
private
No.
emails, texts, and calls might not be so private. Thanks to Section 702 of the FISA Amendment Act, intelligence agencies can collect data on foreign nationals, but there's a backdoor that lets them surveil people in the United States as well. And it's not just the NSA. Federal and even local law enforcement can access personal data from third parties without a warrant. This means that your emails, your texts, and your calls are
I gotta say, exaggerating your family's wealth is a form of character
vulnerable.
assassination.
That's
Is a
where
new
Proton
form of
Mail
brain
comes
rot.
in.
I never thought.
Take control of your privacy
Yeah,
by
especially
clicking my link in the
because like
description box
it's
and
not
downloading
even a
Proton's
thing.
free encrypted email service to protect your identity online. Proton is built with privacy at its core.
It's not
Headquartered
even-
in Switzerland, it's
it's
protected
not
by some of the
even
world's
like
strongest
a
privacy
thing
laws.
that
Laws that make it illegal for
impacts
Swiss
me at
companies to
all.
cooperate with foreign surveillance.
My
This means that
favorite
in
type of
principle,
lie
no
is the
government can
type of
force
lie where
Proton
it's
to
like,
hand over
even
your
if it
emails
was
to
real, it still doesn't change
Proton uses
anything.
end-to-end
You know what I
encryption,
mean?
meaning your emails are locked before they even reach Proton servers. Not even Proton can
Like,
read them. It's
okay,
not just emails.
let's say
Proton
he
Drive,
is.
Proton Pass,
He's
and
not,
Proton Calendar
but
all
let's say he
use
is.
zero
What the
access
fuck does
encryption,
that have to
ensuring
do
your
with
files,
me?
passwords, and schedules stay
You know
yours
what I
and
mean?
yours alone. In a world where governments and corporations constantly look for ways to access your data, privacy shouldn't be a luxury. It should be the default. Join over 100 million people taking control of their
Anyway.
own privacy with Proton. Get started for free using my link, proton.me/Hakim. Thanks to Proton Mail for the sponsorship. This allows me to pay my editor fairly, which is much appreciated. Alright, back to the video. Now, who are they? Billionaires are not a distinct class. They are a small and far richer portion of the bourgeoisie, the owning class, the capitalist class.
No. I mean like nepotism. Well, I am a nepotism recipient. That is not fake. What I'm talking about is what, in terms of my output, in terms of my beliefs, in terms of what I have to say, like, their perspective does not change anything about mine. You know what I mean?
Class. Their relationship to production and how they make their money is fundamentally the same. They just do it on a much larger scale. This doesn't mean they have the same interests as the rest of the wealthy, though. Conflicting interests exist even within social classes depending on the situation. Regardless, estimating the number of billionaires or each of their personal wealth is extremely difficult to do accurately. Since all their wealth is private, the public has no access to the relevant information and have to just estimate based on their stock holdings in public companies. Many people still underestimate just how small a proportion of people billionaires are, about 0.00002% of the global population, or 3,000 people. This is an incredibly tiny minority. Some try to use their wealth to become famous, and you probably already know of those. These people have PR teams helping them boost their public image for their vanity. But you haven't heard of most billionaires. So remember that while we're about to discuss some celebrity examples, this is because it's more convenient to gather information about those particular individuals. In reality, most billionaires are not so open. One person is of special note. The current richest man in the world, and maybe the most notable and obnoxious face of billionaires right now, Elon Musk. Let's make something plainly clear. This man, like practically all billionaires, wasn't self-made, whatever that means to begin with. His father owned the rights to the output of at least 3 emerald mines in apartheid South Africa. His father likewise lent him over 50,000 in inflation-adjusted dollars so that he could buy himself into successful projects. This is beating a dead horse at this point, but there are so many more quirks like this within Musk's life, and it's safe to say that no one watching this has parents that can easily lend them tens of thousands of dollars along with colonial mineral mine wealth.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyways, his political career shot off suddenly in 2022 when sex crime allegations against him went public. He allegedly made a SpaceX flight attendant give him a massage, rubbed her leg, exposed his penis to her, and offered her a horse in exchange for sexual acts. What a strange man this is.
Freak.
This fits with a wider pattern of behavior. He was known to have sex with subordinates at his companies.
Why do people defend billionaires is the name of the video. It should be, the link should be, the URL of the video should be pinned already to the top.
Asked women there to have his babies, and was sued by a different group of plaintiffs for the culture of extreme sexism and sexual harassment that had developed at SpaceX. His Twitter at the time revealed he somehow knew these allegations were coming, despite this evidence though he never faced court or any investigations. Laws simply don't apply at this level of wealth, as long as you don't leverage your wealth to threaten capital. Regardless, his company paid $250,000 to his accuser in exchange for her silence, a tax-deductible expense, mind you. A life-changing amount for her, but pretty cheap to buy legal immunity, wouldn't you say? But when these allegations later went public, and with his reputation at risk, it forced him to quickly pivot into the anti-woke, left-gone-too-far conspiratorial nonsense he's now been most known for. He kinda already had this type of fanbase because he was already a billionaire and obvious fraud, but he had previously kept close ties to the Democratic Party, which is equally cringe, and was known more for his massive promises in tech than his right-wing conspiracies. He donated to both parties and even supported Obama. It's easy to see his strategy in aligning himself with Trump now, though. It provides a fan base who don't care about sex crimes, it provides an easy escape to just say the left made up the allegations, and makes sure no matter how obvious a fraud he is and how many of his projects fail, he can still get public money from Republican states. He's also under investigation by multiple federal authorities, which he can now defund whenever he wants. Moving aside from one particular case example, how does one exactly become a billionaire? Well, there's only one way to become that rich, and it's through capital accumulation. That's the core mechanism of capitalism.
Yeah.
If you have money, you can buy productive and well-performing assets, factories, land, companies, whatever, and those assets bring in even more income. The average person working for wages can't compete with that. They can't even break into the system. Over time, wealth concentrates, not by accident, but by design. Owners don't create value, they extract it. Workers do the labor, but the owners take the profits. The more you own, the more people you can exploit, and when you're sitting at the top of a global system like this, with billions of people beneath you, even a small cut from each person adds up fast. This isn't rhetoric, this is an empirically verifiable phenomenon referred to as surplus value extraction. For a deeper dive into how this mechanism actually takes place, check out this video here. This is how you get fortunes so massive, they're completely detached from anything a single person could.
Exploitation in the Marxian sense is just simply how things are. It's just profit, right? It's called exploitation because it's an extraction of surplus labor value, as in your output to the company, you're always going to be paid less. You're always going to be paid less than what you generate for the company. Okay? That's it. Capitalists look to that and say, this is a good thing. Socialists look to that and say, this is not a good thing. People that try to claim that this is not, happening are fucking delusional. It doesn't make any sense. You either believe that this is a just process and good, or you don't. But you can't deny that it happens. No getting banned and wondering what I did. Oh, okay. Here, take a week off. That's so funny that you guys think that I won't fucking ban you. I'll give you all weeks off. I'll give you all weeks off. Like, literally, I don't give a shit. You should be excited at the prospect that fucking... Like... Even if you think you're making a joke, I'll blast you for a week. I don't give a shit. I'll blast you for a week. I don't give a shit. Be happy that I didn't fucking put you on a perma. This is a fucking dictatorship. A dictatorship of the streamer class, not of the chatter class. Okay? Let's continue.
Ever do by just working. It's not about working hard, it's about already being rich enough to keep multiplying that wealth. Likewise, nobody becomes a billionaire by selling one specific product. That's just branding. They don't make their money from apps or oil. They make their money from capital people do and labor does. The thing all billionaires have in common is that their money comes from other people's work. Most often it's employees. Billionaires have in common is that their money comes from other people's work. Most often it's employees who weren't paid the full value of what they created, or less frequently customers they ripped off. So when you hear somebody described as a tech billionaire or a finance billionaire, just remember, those are surface level differences. In practice, every stock market billionaire. They underpay workers, overcharge consumers, and rely on state support to protect and grow their profits. It doesn't matter the sector, it's the same playbook system. That said, it's still worth looking into how they pull it off. What are the common tactics used to win in capitalist competition and ensure the highest amount of exploitation possible? How do they boost company profits and make sure as much of that profit as possible ends up in their own pockets? Let's walk through some of the tricks. Billionaires usually own companies which have monopolies over certain parts of the market. This allows them to generate massive profits without ever facing the competition capitalism promises. Monopolies empower companies to exploit both consumers and workers the most, and therefore brings the most profit to their owners. Monopolies are another basic feature of capitalist economics. Capitalism always tends towards monopoly. See my video on this. Bigger companies always have the edge. They scale faster, they produce cheaper, and they've got the cash to bury competition in lawsuits or buy them out entirely. They also push legal boundaries to maximize profit. They can afford the fines, the legal teams, and lobbyists required where small businesses can't. The larger you are, the easier it is to grow. I don't think this is a difficult concept to grasp. The more you grow, the more you can dominate and eliminate competitors in the market. That's why capitalism naturally tends towards monopoly. The system rewards size and punishes small players. Not every billionaire runs a monopoly though, but many do, or they benefit from one close enough in practice. There are many very prominent examples. Obviously that's why there are so many energy and mining and infrastructure billionaires. These fields are most common for legal monopolies, but even in tech, an industry that styles itself as new and competitive and disruptive, Amazon's marketplace, for example, is a monopoly, and they're currently being sued for it. Their whole strategy revolves around predatory pricing. This means undercutting competitors can't survive, then hiking prices once the competition is gone. And it doesn't stop there. They've used all kinds of anti-competitive tactics. Price gouging, controlling pricing rules for third-party sellers, removing competing products, rigging search results, and pressuring vendors to let Amazon offer the lowest price. They even had a US patent up until 2017 on one-click purchasing online. This effectively blocked out all competition because they were legally forced to be inconvenient to use. It wasn't even an invention, just a basic use of internet technology. Microsoft did it too. For years, they had a near total monopoly on operating systems. When they saw software that could run across multiple operating systems as a potential threat, they attacked. After trying and failing to set up a non-compete agreement, they went all in on illegal tactics. They bundled Internet Explorer with Windows, made it hard to uninstall, and made other browsers deliberately harder to use. The goal was to kill competition before it became a threat. This tactic of software bundling is now standard across the industry. Facebook, or now Meta, followed the same path. They had a social media monopoly and started losing ground because their platform sucked. Instead of competing and improving, they just bought out every rising platform. WhatsApp and Instagram and a million others. This isn't innovation, it's consolidation of markets. Musk and Trump are privileged outliers, having built their brands on fraud and idiocy. Most of Musk's successes happened without him present, and Trump's just consistently failed, seemingly. But even Musk found a way to corner the satellite internet market once he was already a billionaire. In some parts of the world, he effectively controls the internet just by spending more money on it than anybody else could. Billionaires don't get rich on their own. Most of them are plugged straight into the state, getting public money one way or another. For the monarchs and dictators, it's obvious, it's their whole thing. But even these so-called self-made business billionaires, well, it's the same story, just dressed up in different branding. They rake in huge amounts of public cash, usually through their companies. We're talking subsidies and tax breaks and fat government contracts, even straight up handouts, like the many bailouts they get when market-caused economic recessions hit. Almost every big company with a billionaire at the top has gotten some kind of massive state support at one point or another. And not just once usually, this happens over and over again, usually under better terms than what small businesses or startups could get. It's part of what keeps them at the top. Musk is the poster child for this. The government's handed him at least $38 billion so far, and that's just the public info. That doesn't even include secret Pentagon deals like the $1.8 billion spy satellite contract for SpaceX. Then there's Amazon, which has pulled in over $3.7 billion in local and state subsidies, while towns around the country are cutting public services or raising taxes just to stay afloat. Even Facebook is cash in, getting massive tax breaks for vague promises about jobs or innovations, and leaving communities with nothing but surveillance and debt. That's also not mentioning all the taxes they dodge. The trick is often the same. These giant companies play cities and states off of each other. They promise them jobs, maybe a shiny new facility, and suddenly everybody's throwing public money at them just to stay in the running. Sometimes it's desperation, other times it's just a convenient excuse, an easy way for local officials to funnel cash to the rich in exchange for campaign money or cushy favors. Either way, it's not innovation that builds these fortunes, it's public money, your money, quietly funneled upwards, turned into private wealth for the people already holding most of the cards.
Your money and your labor. Your money, your tax breaks, your subsidies, and more importantly of all, your labor. This is so important because once you recognize that reality, there's really no going back. It's very hard to look at the system that we exist under in the same way. Once that reality sets in. This is why people are so terrified of any kind of anti-capitalist way of thinking. They don't want, like, this is what most people don't understand about Das Kapital either. Okay? Streamers make money off people who made those YouTube videos. Yes, exactly. I am exploiting Hakim by watching his YouTube video because I am basically the robber baron of the content creation world. I like that people still do this argument. Like, I only watch my friends' videos at this point. Like, content creators who want me to watch their videos. And people still fucking complain about it. It's like, dude, both parties have consented to this. Why the fuck are you chirping? That's number one. Number two, as I was saying, people don't understand. Das Kapital is not a like how to overthrow capitalism textbook. It's just describing capitalism. The reality of the matter is, it is not the wealthy, the bourgeois class is not afraid of you learning anger and resentment towards the wealthy. They're afraid of you learning how the system actually works. They have class consciousness. You don't. Yeah, it's descriptive. It's not prescriptive. It's just when you figure out how the system works, it's very hard to defend it. It's very hard to defend it, especially when you recognize your position inside of the system. That's it.
Under capitalism, private media tends to conglomerate, and it serves the interests of the owner class who can always control it and outproduce those smaller groups they don't control. See my video on this here. This is bad enough, but with billionaires able to own majority stakes in media companies, they get an immense level of personal control over media output. This may be media billionaires who own and control large portions of the media environment, or even unrelated billionaires who purchase media outlets just to further their influence. The Wall Street Journal and New York Times are owned by billionaires. On the TV side, you've got names like Brian Roberts at Comcast and John Malone at Liberty Media calling the shots. Not to mention, these are often the same individuals with close ties to state power, or even occupying government positions themselves. This completely undermines the idea of the media holding democratic governments to account, if you ever believed this bullshit to begin with. So we have a media system broadly skewed towards protecting vested financial interests. As the rich get richer, they'll inevitably purchase and merge more and more outlets, increasing the amount of the market that they can directly control. Musk and Zuckerberg control social media, with the US threatening to ban the only thing they don't, which was TikTok. There's that thing of the state supporting monopolies again. Even Bezos owns a newspaper, The Washington Post. He didn't build its ill-gotten reputation, he bought it and now exploits it. Freedom of the press under capitalism is the freedom for the rich to buy the press, buy the writers, and shape public opinion into whatever serves their class. In the US, almost every major media outlet is owned, at least in part, by a billionaire. Some, like Robert Murdoch and Michael Bloomberg, built their empires in media from the start. Others, like Bezos, just bought their way into it once the money was already made. For them, media isn't about journalism, it's about control and pushing their agenda. It's not even subtle. Musk, for example, took over Twitter, gutted the safety systems, and then personally banned journalists who criticized them. That's not just editorial bias, that's straight up, if I don't like it, it goes. He doesn't even pretend to be objective. That's the kind of power you get when you own the platform. It's not just what gets reported, it's about what doesn't. Stories disappear, certain opinions are sidelined. Journalists know that one person determines the perspective of their whole company, and that to keep a job, they must make things their boss's boss agrees with, even if they don't.
It's also funny because like people still say he's a free speech warrior too.
Own the publication. A billionaire can fund a lawsuit quietly and take down an entire news outlet if it steps out of line. Just like they buy competing companies, they buy up the press to consolidate their power. Whether it's through ownership, influence, or outright censorship, it all amounts to the same thing. Deciding what the public gets to see, and more importantly, what they don't. Billionaires also try to influence the government directly. Government policy in capitalist democracies always favors the interests of the rich. In places with high concentrations of billionaires, that's especially true, except for China and Vietnam. I wonder why. Regardless, in places like the US, they donate massive amounts to political campaigns. It's also very common for billionaires to donate to both, a clear sign that they're trying to secure their interests on both sides of the ballot. They spend massive amounts of money on shady lobbying efforts, encouraging officials to act in a way that helps them. Again, the US is particularly bad for the sheer amount of money being spent. Through these methods, at every level of government, the ultra-rich build a state that furthers only their interests. This administration has seen even more public staffing of high-profile positions with billionaires, for no other reason than they are rich. Even the president is a billionaire, supposedly. The US has always been run de facto by the rich, but now it's formally run by them as well. Now, what is the solution? The goal of any dedicated policy towards billionaires should be to reduce their wealth and power to a socially manageable level, ideally making sure there are no more billionaires. Many solutions come to mind, some more Vietnamese or Chinese in flavor. A certain funny Nintendo Italian man also had a good idea. Likewise, nationalization. We'll get to that. Let's talk more liberal-friendly solutions at first. We could tax wealth. Not all of it, just the top slice, the wealth at the 99.9 percentile and above, that ultra-elite layer, which is worth about $12 trillion, well, at least as of 2019. A simple 1% tax on that would bring in $120 billion a year. That's real money, translating to real resources that can be used to better the world. All from a tiny sliver of the richest people with barely a dent in their lifestyles. I would dare say no dent in their lifestyles. On a global scale, it's impossible to calculate accurately the amount of money that would be saved. And economies aren't really anywhere near as simple as tax and spend anyway. But the result would be reducing all the harm billionaires do and freeing up trillions in wasted resources. And let's not pretend the current system is somehow fair. The US tax structure has basically flattened out. Most people, rich, poor, and in between, end up paying roughly the same than almost everyone else. They're not paying their fair share despite their companies benefiting from infrastructure and public grants more than anyone. A lot of people know this already. Polls show that 50% of their companies benefiting from infrastructure and public grants more than anyone. A lot of people know this already. Polls show that 57% of Americans think billionaires are taxed too little, and nearly half think they're not even paying what they legally owe. That's a depressingly low statistic for obvious facts. But imagine if they were actually provided the education information and not propaganda. With better cross-border data sharing and digital tools, tracking wealth is easier than ever. If the government wanted to enforce it, it could. And if the law was designed right, with no sneaky loopholes or special treatment, it could easily actually work. Not to mention the prospect of harmonizing tax requirements, or taxing corporations based on the tax rate where they operate and not where they're based.
The funniest part about it is the idea that like a wealth tax is completely unfeasible when a wealth tax already exists. It's called property taxes. And like, sure, Americans don't like that either, but it fucking exists already. There are financial tools at our disposal to be able to figure out what the tax burden looks like and to analyze wealth that we consider to be taxable. It's not about the hurdle here is not the difficulties. The hurdle here is a lack of willingness from our politicians. Interesting stuff, by the way, especially considering Donald Trump recently came out and said, a billionaire tax, a wealthy millionaire tax, maybe we can't do it. Seems like we can't do it. No, people wouldn't like it. It's like, yeah, your friends wouldn't like it. Everyone else would like it. Mr. Read the Room.
There's so many ways of doing this, it could be its own video. That's all well and good, but it's not enough. A real strategy should be focused on the nationalization and collectivization of the most critical industries, a tight leash on any allowed public business activity with direct government oversight, and severe laws against both political meddling through wealth, lobbying, corruption, and profit-seeking through unethical practices. The final step is the liquidation of the capitalist class as a class, and history is replete with successful examples of such and how to carry it out. A wise Chinese man once said, "Political power grows out of the ballot box." No, that's not what he said. Well, look at his example and see what he did. It's kind of, that is the correct approach. For now though, taxation is not radical. It should be a routine first step at those incredibly high brackets. A billionaire's wealth is always the result of theft stolen from the people who need the money the most through preferential government handouts for corporations, and stolen from the people who actually create the value. Rob a house and you're a criminal. Rob the planet and you are a billionaire. They made an idiot out of all their supporters. You have absolutely no reason to defend billionaires, and they won't ever defend you. A better world is possible. That's all for this time. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you too.
Great video by Hakim titled, "Why Do People Defend Billionaires?"